Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into a seriously chilling case, the horrifying history of a cursed book. I absolutely love unpacking these kinds of supernatural narratives because, they build up suspense in such a structured, methodical way. We're going to break down the entire timeline, the deep lore, and the exact sequence of events that ultimately led to an unimaginable tragedy. So settle in, turn the lights down a bit, and let's explore a terrifying piece of source material that is absolutely going to send shivers down your spine.
Right off the bat, I want you to think about something for a second. What if just reading a few words out loud could literally unleash hell? I mean, we usually think of reading as a totally safe, passive activity, right? Well, the core premise of the historical account we're looking at today completely shatters that sense of comfort. It suggests that mere curiosity, literally just the simple act of reading a strange text aloud, can act as a physical key to unlock ancient, bloodthirsty evils. To really get why this is so terrifying, we've got to set the scene. We're looking at a small, wooden house situated just outside a tiny town in New Zealand. Picture this. It's completely swallowed up by dense, imposing pine forests, rolling hills, and a deep, dark lake right in the backyard. This was the home of an elderly man named Richard. It's literally the perfect, isolated stage for a horror story, miles away from any immediate help.
So the whole nightmare kicks off with a seemingly simple inciting incident. One day, a postman arrives and finds Richard's front door just standing wide open. He calls out, steps inside, and nothing. The place is completely abandoned. Richard had apparently been missing for days. The police get notified, they do a massive sweep of the property, comb through the dense forest, drag the deep lake, and they find absolutely nothing, not a single trace. So without any leads, Richard is officially declared dead. Now enter Richard's 25-year-old granddaughter, Mia, who inherits the property. Her plan was incredibly straightforward, just a mundane chore, really. She was going to travel from LA, clean out the house, sort through some documents, sell the property, and fly back home. Simple, right? But the reality she was actually stepping into was a whole different story. She wasn't just walking into an estate sale. She was walking directly into an ancient, unimaginable terror. So Mia spends her first day just cleaning, eventually making her way out to the garage. And tucked away, wedged between the very back shelf and the wall, she finds this thick bundle wrapped up in black cloth. She unwraps it and discovers this truly ancient book. The source material describes its appearance so vividly. The cover is literally stitched together from these strange mismatched pieces of leather. Slap in the center is a bizarre circular symbol showing twisted, tangled roots. And if you looked closely at it, there was a horrifying face hidden right within the design. And here's the kicker. It took exactly 1 page. Mia opens this thing and looks at the very first page. It's covered in these bizarre words written in this deep, dark red ink. The margins are crammed with disturbing sketches, upside-down trees, monsters with huge fangs coming out of the fog, and these weird eye symbols that almost felt like they were staring right back at her. Naturally, as she's trying to make sense of it, she finds herself unconsciously reading the strange words aloud. And the very second the final word leaves her lips, a sharp, burning sensation just pierces the fingers of her right hand, making her violently slam the book shut. The immediate fallout from reading those words was instant and terrifying. That calm, quiet reality of the New Zealand countryside, gone. The very moment that book snapped shut, the sky outside turned pitch black. Gale-force winds suddenly whipped up, bending these massive pine trees completely sideways. The lake started churning with violent waves, and this massive swarm of black crows just began aggressively circling the farmhouse. It was as if the environment itself was recoiling from the book being opened. What Mia stumbled onto here is what supernatural lore experts call a Book of the Dead. We're talking about an ancient artifact that has the horrifying ability to awaken bloodthirsty demonic entities and literally turn a normal home into a living hell. Interestingly, the source material actually points out how this deeply unsettling premise perfectly mirrors the core plot of the upcoming Sony Pictures film, Evil Dead Burn, which dives into these exact same nightmarish themes. But it gets worse and much more personal. The physical curse manifested instantly. Mia looks down at her right hand, the one that had just felt that sudden burn, and sees something deeply horrifying. A thin, black line had emerged between her fingers. And it didn't look like a scratch or a mark. It looked and felt exactly like tree roots, actively spreading and growing right beneath the surface of her skin. Completely panicked, she wraps the book back in its canvas, shoves it behind the shelf, and barricades herself in the upstairs bedroom. From here, things escalate incredibly fast. Just to put the timeline in perspective, in the afternoon,
Mia finds the book. By evening, that crazy supernatural storm hits. Eventually, things kind of quiet down, and an utterly exhausted Mia actually manages to fall asleep. But in the dead of night, she's jolted awake by this sudden, violent scream echoing from downstairs. Someone in the drawing room is frantically screaming for help. So she creeps downstairs, absolutely terrified, and when she gets to the drawing room, she just freezes. He came back. Sitting right there at the dining table with that cursed book resting ominously right next to him was her missing grandfather, Richard. The exact same man the authorities had declared completely dead was now sitting inside his own house, screaming for someone to help him. And this is not a heartwarming family reunion. Okay, Richard's condition was utterly horrific. He was extremely frail, like he was practically wasting away. His clothes were completely caked in wet, heavy mud, as if he'd literally been living under the dirt. He had these deep, dark, sunken circles under his eyes that just projected pure terror. Mia, who is trembling with shock at this point, rushes over to calm him down and get him some water, while Richard's eyes are just darting all over the room, staring at the windows and the ceiling in a state of absolute pure panic. Once she finally gets him to breathe for a second, Richard drops this terrifying bombshell. The book holds a bloodthirsty ancient entity. He explains that years ago, when he first bought the house, he found the book buried behind a shelf. He opened it, read it, and from that day forward, he was never alone. He started hearing voices. He saw horrifying faces that would mimic the people he loved. He was so terrified he actually abandoned the house and hid out in some old cabins by the lake. But when he saw that massive storm and the crows earlier that evening, he knew exactly what happened. The entity was awake again, and he rushed back to try and save Mia. But Richard doesn't even get to finish his warning. Suddenly, his eyes lock onto the kitchen window. Mia follows his gaze out into the complete darkness of the pine forest. And standing perfectly still out there in the pitch-black woods, staring directly back into the house, is a girl. As Mia squints to look closer, she realizes with this mounting sense of dread that the girl's entire face is severely burnt. And this wasn't just some random ghost in the woods. When Mia looked into those charred, dead eyes, her stomach just completely dropped. The girl was Mia. It was her. She was looking out the window at a horrifying supernatural premonition of her own immediate future. Right as that horrifying realization hits her, absolute chaos erupts back at the dining table. Richard's face begins contorting violently. The veins in his neck start bulging out and instantly turn this putrid dark black. His eyes roll back into his head until they are completely stark white. In a split second, he is consumed by this terrifying, unnatural rage. The bloodthirsty ancient entity had fully possessed him. From that moment on, the house itself essentially turns into a weapon. It's this rapid, relentless demonic escalation. First, the cursed book on the table violently blows open, the pages turning rapidly without a single gust of wind in the room. Next, as each new page is exposed, those exact same demonic circular symbols from the cover begin literally burning themselves right into the wooden walls. Then, the dead, cold ash in the fireplace just suddenly and violently ignites into a massive, roaring blaze. The entity is taking complete, total control. Mia desperately lunges for the book to snap it shut, but she is hit with this searing heat. The moment her skin makes contact with the leather cover, her veins burn like her palm is full of hot coals, and those black, root-like symbols start rapidly spreading up her arm. At the exact same time, the possessed Richard grabs a massive iron candle stand off the table. Boiling hot wax is just pouring directly onto his bare hands, but he doesn't even flinch. He just advances on Mia, raising that heavy iron stand high above his head to strike her down. And this frantic, desperate struggle is what triggers the final catastrophe. Mia, trying to dodge this lethal swing of the candle stand, shoves Richard back with all her might. He crashes violently into the wall, and the burning candles connect with the heavy fabric curtains. Within seconds, the fire just explodes. The entire house goes up in flames. Richard is instantly engulfed in the inferno. Mia makes a desperate dash to escape through the kitchen window, the exact same window where she saw her burnt double. But it's too late. The towering flames surround her, completely sealing her fate. Fast forward a bit, and by the time the fire brigade finally makes it out to this isolated property, the destruction is absolute. When the police eventually sift through the wreckage, the entire scene is just reduced to ash. Down in the rubble, they found the severely burnt bodies of Richard and Mia. That terrifying premonition Mia saw out in the woods, it came true in the most brutal way imaginable. Their entire physical world was completely eradicated.
But here is the detail that will absolutely keep you up at night. The police are standing in the middle of a house that has been completely reduced to cinders. Yet sitting right there, right in the middle of the gray ashes where the dining table used to be, is the Book of the Dead. Perfectly intact. Not a single page was singed, not a single piece of that strange leather was even scorched. The entity inside remained completely untouched, simply waiting for the very next person to open the cover. You know, this specific brand of inescapable, mind-bending terror translates perfectly into modern horror media. Mia's deadly encounter in the New Zealand woods is basically the exact blueprint for the kind of supernatural dread we see brought to life on the big screen. In fact, the source material explicitly points out the parallels to the upcoming film Evil Dead Burn, where a character named Alice arrives at a family farmhouse, stumbles across a creepy Book of the Dead, and awakens an ancient demonic entity that turns the home into a living hell. The similarities are honestly striking.
So, if the mechanics of this curse and the whole unstoppable ancient entity vibe sound like your kind of thrill, the source material notes that you can actually see these themes explored cinematically very soon. Sony Pictures' Evil Dead Burn is releasing in theaters on July 10th, bringing this incredibly deep, lore-driven supernatural terror right to audiences. Knowing everything we've just uncovered today, the sheer isolation of the house, the terrifying spread of the black veins, the environmental chaos, and the total fiery destruction left in its wake, let me ask you, if you were cleaning out an old garage and you found a strange, leather-bound book wrapped in thick black cloth hidden behind a dusty shelf, would you open it? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Stay curious, but maybe stay just a little bit cautious.